Everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Harika. So in this particular video, I'm going to show you how we can deploy the policy that we have created. So in the previous video, we have seen how to deploy how to create the policy for the studio, right? So now if I just go to studio and check the policy has been deployed or not. So how you can actually check that? So you can open the studio and you can come to the help tab. So towards the right side, you can see all the information, like what is the version of it, what is the installation type, is a user installation or service mode installation. Then you can see what is the product license provider is from orchestrator, and also later below you can see company policy. It is set to none. That means none of the policy has been applied on this particular studio, right? So this is how you can check. And one more thing, if I have to check, show you here in the settings under the design, you can observe these are all available for the user to modify. But if you remember in the previous video, I have created a policy for letting this as a mandatory field, right? So if you just see this policy which we have created, enforce analyzer before publish and allow users to override, it has unchecked. That means it will not allow the users to override. And enforce analyzer before publish is no. You can keep this yes and then save. That means your policy will keep this enforced by default and it will not let you to modify that, correct? So let's do one thing. I'm not modifying anything over here. And now I'm going to deploy the policy and we will see how the policy deployment will affect the changes in our studio. So first of all, how do you deploy the policy? We all know to create, we are going here. Just beside that, we have something called deployment. Click on it. And here there are three different levels of deployment. So first is tenant level, and the next one is group level, and the other one is user level. So why we have these three different levels? It's very important to understand. Let's consider a practical scenario in your organization. If you're developing something and you are working on a project, you will have certain type of licenses, right? And you may also have different other kind. It's not restricted only to a single type. Let's say you are also admin for orchestrator, you're doing something, or you are also citizen developer. You have different license types. You've been part of different groups, right? So in such cases, applying the policy or deploying the policy at the tenant level will not affect your instance of studio or in instance of orchestrator or studio X, right? So because you are part of different groups, so it may not actually affect you. So but if you are part of one group, then definitely yes, whatever the policies that are deployed will be applicable to you. But if you're part of different groups, then in that case you have to take a granular approach. So you have to go to the groups, and whatever the groups that you're part of, you have to apply the policies accordingly. So let's consider this scenario. You're part of citizen developer group and also some automation developer group, like a RPA developer, proper RPA developer group. So in such case, when you're acquiring the license of Studio X, you should be applying, or you should be having the Studio X with the policies applied from Studio X policy, correct? But when you are opening a studio by acquiring the automation user license, then you should not be applied the policies of Studio X, right? That's not actual expectation. So in that case, how do we differentiate? How do you work? How do you prioritize that policies? Is something very important to understand. So these by using these two levels, like levels of deployment, tenant level deployment and the group level deployment, will help us to streamline the policies and apply the policies accordingly to people who are using different or various policies in the organization. Okay, so going further, if I show that example, it will be even more clear to you and it will be even more understandable to you of how you can deploy the different policies for people who are under various groups and various licenses types. So first of all, if I just show you the tenant, for every level of the deployment, there are some default policy types. So if you go to the tenant, these are the different license types that we have. So if you see towards the right for no license, and let's go for citizen developer, for these all policies, if you see towards the right, by default, there's no policy applied. Unless you provide some policy, there's no policy applied. By default is no policy. But that's not the case with the groups. So if I just show you the groups, these are the different groups that we have. So I will show you the groups once here. So these are the various groups that are available. These are built-in groups and you can't modify these groups types. Okay. But you can add the members, but you can't modify or delete it. So, and also if you see this acquire developer, it uses citizen developer name license, right? So if you go to automation developers, it uses, okay, it does not acquire any license. We can provide it. If you see automation users, it also does not have, right? But it has certain accesses to and everything, correct? So these are all the various groups that are already available, right? So if you provide, so let's say if I'm going to automation users, in the automation users, if you see here, there's one difference from tenant level deployment to group level deployment. In tenant level deployment, if you don't apply any policy, by default it's a no policy, right? But here, if you don't apply policy, it is something inherited from tenant. That means if the tenant is having any policy, it will be inherited from there based on the group that they are part of. Okay, so by default it's inherited from tenant. So in practical, we will see how this will be differentiated in a scenario where the person is part of two groups. How this will be inherited is something which is quite interesting to learn and observe. That is one thing. And then the final one is users. So in the users, there it is very granular level of deployment, and you can apply the policies specific to the users. So let's say I wanted to apply policy to myself, so I can just go ahead and then I can apply the policy, right? So whatever the policies that you apply here will be taken onto the user. This is the most granular way of deployment out of the other two which we have seen, the tenant and the group, right? So this is how you can apply, and there is no way of missing out any policy if you go and apply user level. But however, in any organization there will be large number of users, right? So it will be very difficult to go ahead and apply to each and every single user. So as per me, from my experience, I would say going to the groups would be more uh, easy and also more practical way of applying the deployments, because it will help us to decide based on the priority and everything. So now let's go ahead and quickly deploy a policy at the tenant level or at the group level to see how that works. Okay. So let's say if I apply a policy. So one policy that I have is that I've created is for studio, right? So now what I'm going to do for the automation developers, I will go to automation developers, and for this I'm going to apply studio policy. So let's apply studio policy. We have studio policy 2, which we have deployed. So I'm going to click on save. So successfully updated group policies. That means whoever part of the automation developers group have got the policies applied. So now here we cannot see that until you close it and open. Okay, it's not something which automatically refreshes. You have to close and open the instance to get the policies reflected. So it's just taking a little time to open it up, and then so we can go to the help, and we can see here initially it was none, right? But now you can see the company policies studio policy 2. That means whatever the policy that you have applied has been taken and deployed over here. So now, as I told you initially, go to the settings, just check it out. So if you see here, we have enforced a policy, right? We have kept always this to S, and I can't change this here. It is grayed out, right? So this is how this one also, right? We are not allowing the users to change. So this is how you can enforce the policies. You can create and enforce the policies using automation ops onto Studio. We have seen Studio is one of the product, right? So similar to Studio, you can deploy it for various other products. You can create the policies and you can deploy it there as well based on your need. So this is how you can deploy. I hope it is clear for how you can deploy the policies. But there is one more major thing that you should understand when you're deploying the policies is with respect to priorities and how it will be applied when the user is part of different groups. Because single group, I don't think in major organizations it won't be actually the practical scenario. People usually be part of multiple groups. If it's a singular group, then definitely you can go ahead and apply it this way. It works perfectly. But if the user is part of multiple groups, then in such cases you have to actually define these policies, various types of policies, and you have to apply them based on priority. So that is something which is crucial and important. I'll take it as a different video and I'll talk about it in the next video. So if you like the content, do consider subscribing to my channel and like, share the video across your friends. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.